Fellow gardeners, imagine walking through the sprawling agricultural estates that fed the mighty Roman Empire, where millions thrived on crops grown without a single bag of synthetic fertilizer. The secret wasn't just their famous engineering prowess or favorable climate, it was their revolutionary understanding of soil fertility through fermentation. Today we're diving deep into these ancient techniques that can transform your modern garden into a thriving ecosystem of unparalleled productivity. The Romans didn't just throw organic matter into piles and wait. They understood something profound about the decomposition process that modern gardening has largely forgotten in our rush toward chemical solutions. So their approach to composting was fundamentally different from what most of us practice today. They really focused on controlled fermentation, rather than just simple decay. This distinction actually makes all the difference between creating truly living soil and just, adding organic matter to your garden beds. Roman agricultural writers like Cato the Elder and Marcus Terentius Varro documented some pretty sophisticated composting techniques. They prioritized anaerobic fermentation right alongside traditional aerobic decomposition. So this dual-phase process, it actually created what we now understand to be a more nutrient-dense and microbiologically active soil amendment. The Romans would layer their organic materials in specific ratios, often incorporating ash from their hypocaust heating systems, food scraps, animal manures, and, believe it or not, even human waste in carefully managed proportions. The fermentation phase happens when organic materials are packed tightly enough to exclude oxygen, which creates an environment where beneficial anaerobic bacteria really thrive. So these microorganisms break down complex organic compounds into, readily available nutrients, while also producing organic acids that actually help preserve the compost and prevent putrefaction. Unlike a lot of modern composting methods that aim to eliminate all anaerobic conditions just to prevent odors, the Romans actually embraced controlled fermentation as a pathway to, enhanced fertility. This process, interestingly enough, naturally produces beneficial microorganisms that modern soil science recognizes as, truly crucial for plant health. So, lactobacillus bacteria, which really thrive during fermentation, create this acidic environment that suppresses harmful pathogens. At the same time, they break down organic matter into forms that plants can immediately use. The result is, honestly, a soil amendment that doesn't just feed your plants, but also actively improves soil structure and water retention. To replicate these ancient techniques in your modern garden, you'll need to shift your thinking away from the typical hot composting methods that, most gardeners are familiar with. So to get started, you'll want to select a container or maybe a designated area where you can create layers of organic materials, all while maintaining some level of compression. Traditionally, folks used clay vessels or lined pits for this process, but honestly, you can get similar results with tightly lidded containers or, even heavy-duty garbage bags if that's what you have on hand. Your base layer should be made up of carbon-rich materials like dried leaves, straw, or shredded paper. After that, you'll want to add a layer of nitrogen-rich materials such as kitchen scraps, fresh grass clippings, or even some aged manure. So, the key difference from conventional composting really lies in the layering technique and how you manage moisture throughout the process. Each layer should actually be moistened to the consistency of a wrung-out sponge, and then compressed to remove excess air pockets that would otherwise encourage aerobic decomposition instead of fermentation. The Romans often added wood ash or lime between layers, which, serves multiple purposes in the fermentation process. If you don't have access to wood ash, you can substitute with a light dusting of agricultural lime, or even crushed eggshells. though the quantities should be minimal to avoid disrupting the fermentation process. Sealing your fermentation vessel is crucial for success. In your modern setup, ensure your containers have tight-fitting lids, or that your designated area can be covered with tarps secured against air infiltration. So, the goal here is really about creating an environment where anaerobic bacteria can flourish without interference from those oxygen-loving decomposers that, create heat and potentially harmful byproducts. What makes Roman fermented compost truly remarkable is its impact on soil biology, rather than just its nutrient content. While conventional compost provides organic matter and slow-release nutrients, fermented compost actually introduces active microbial communities that, continue working in your soil long after application. These beneficial bacteria and fungi, they form symbiotic relationships with plant roots, creating networks that, enhance nutrient uptake, improve disease resistance, and even increase drought tolerance. It's pretty fascinating how nature works together like that. The fermentation process, it preserves and concentrates many nutrients that, honestly, would be lost through traditional hot composting methods. It's a more efficient way to retain those valuable nutrients. Volatile compounds like ammonia, which typically escape during conventional composting, are actually captured and transformed into more stable, organic nitrogen compounds. It's a really interesting way to make sure nothing goes to waste. So basically this means your plants receive a more sustained nutrient release that really aligns with their natural growing patterns, rather than that boom and bust cycle you often see with synthetic fertilizers. Modern soil testing has actually revealed that gardens treated with fermented organic matter show dramatically increased microbial diversity, especially when compared to those that get only conventional compost or chemical fertilizers. And this biological richness translates into improved soil structure, better water infiltration, and honestly, enhanced carbon sequestration. The transformation doesn't happen overnight, but, gardeners who commit to Roman-inspired fermentation methods typically see results within a single growing season. Perhaps most importantly, the soil itself begins to develop that rich, earthy smell and crumbly texture that indicates a thriving underground ecosystem. Successfully incorporating these Roman techniques requires patience and observation, qualities that ancient agricultural societies understood as essential for long-term productivity. It's always a good idea to start small with just a single fermentation container or maybe a designated garden area. This way, you can give yourself the chance to really learn the subtle signs of proper fermentation, and also spot any problematic anaerobic conditions that might pop up. Temperature monitoring is actually super helpful because it lets you tell the difference between fermentation and decomposition. By keeping the temperature lower, you're able to preserve those beneficial microorganisms that, honestly, would be destroyed by the heat you'd see in conventional composting systems. The Romans understood seasonal timing in their composting practices, often beginning fermentation processes during cooler months, when the controlled environment could be maintained more easily. Modern gardeners can adapt this wisdom by starting fermentation projects in fall or early spring, allowing several months for the process to complete before peak growing season. Your fermented compost is ready when it has developed a uniform dark color and crumbly texture with no recognizable pieces of original organic matter. Unlike conventional compost, properly fermented material won't heat up when exposed to air, which, indicates that the microbial communities have reached a stable, balanced state that's really ready for soil integration. The agricultural wisdom of ancient Rome actually offers modern gardeners a pathway to truly sustainable soil fertility, one that works with natural processes rather than against them. By understanding and applying these fermentation principles, you're not just adding nutrients to your soil, you're in fact cultivating a living ecosystem that will continue providing benefits for years to come. These techniques represent more than just historical curiosity. Honestly, they're a practical solution to modern gardening challenges like soil depletion, water retention issues, and, our dependence on external inputs. The Romans fed an entire empire using methods that actually improved their land over time. That's a pretty stark contrast to a lot of modern agricultural practices, which often end up depleting soil resources instead. So, are you ready to unlock the fertility secrets of the ancients in your own garden? Why not start your experiment today? And hey, don't forget to subscribe to the Living Soil Lab for more deep dives into time-tested gardening wisdom that transforms both soil and gardens. Be sure to share this guide with fellow gardeners who are ready to embrace ancient wisdom for modern growing success.